Joining me now are Pat Sarb, Mary Fitzpatrick, and Kasturi Haldar. The families of both Pat and Mary have been affected by a rare disease called non-ketotic hyperglycemia, or simply NKH. Kasturi is a biologist and the director of Notre Dame's Böhler-Parseghian Center for Rare and Neglected Diseases, and they're here today to tell their stories and what brought them here. So Pat, let's start with you. Tell us about your grandson and how you got involved with the center.
Well, our grandson Owen was born about 4.5 years ago. He seemed like a typical newborn. A few days after, he was within a day or two of his birth, our son Joe and our daughter-in-law Michelle knew there was something that seemed to be uncharacteristic about him, and he was shortly thereafter sent to the NICU. Spent a good part of his first 3 months in the NICU. And it was several weeks before he was actually diagnosed with NKH, and the diagnosis was done by Dr. Johan van Hove of UC Denver in Colorado. And after that, it was just a matter of us feeling helpless as grandparents, trying to figure out what can we do. NKH affects the brain cells and the muscular system, and so there's significant disabilities. Mm-hmm. But having played for Era Parseghian on the 73 championship team, I was following Era's ordeal, and Mike Parseghian was a teammate of mine, so I was following the research that they were doing and the fundraising. And so now we were hit personally with a grandchild that had rare genetic disease. I contacted Cindy Parseghian, and I asked her, who should I contact? I was aware of the center here on campus, and she said, get a hold of Dr. Haldar, and she'll be glad to meet with you. And we did eventually meet with Kasturi and the research staff here on campus. They welcomed us with open arms. They felt that NKH was a disease that they could start researching. We brought Joe and Michelle and Owen to campus, and they met with the staff and the researchers. And the great thing about the staff here at the center is that they want to meet the families. They want to get to know the families. It becomes a personal incentive for them to find ways to cure the families. So now there's a research fund for NKH that we've started up in the last 15, 16 months, and Kasturi is now working with Dr. Van Hove, and got the team working all for the same goal. Yeah, and you mentioned Coach Parseghian, whose grandchildren were stricken with Niemann-Pick, and I understand they're making great strides with that as well. Okay. Mary, how has NKH affected your family?
My husband John and I, we have 3 daughters, Katie, Maggie, and Fiona. The youngest is Fiona, and she was born 10 years ago this month. She was diagnosed on day 9 with NKH, the severe form. At that point in time, it was so rare, nobody really ever heard of it. So we were researching stuff on the internet, and it's pretty much what the doctors were telling us. There wasn't a whole lot known. To make a long story short, we were sent home a month later after being in the NICU, sent home on hospice. Doctors said that, if she did survive getting off the vent, which she did, she would live just a very short time. They said that she would not be able to walk, not hold her head up, not crawl, pretty much relied on me for all of her assistance. To our surprise, when she came home from the hospital, her 2 sisters, Katie and Maggie, at the time they were 3.5 and 5, and they finally got to meet their little sister. We pretty much did what we could for 3 years, and Fiona passed away in 2009, just before her 3rd birthday. But we learned an awful lot from her about unconditional love. We came about I found out or met with Joe and Michelle Sarb about a couple years ago through the internet connection with NKH. And through that, I found out what Pat was doing. And then last October, we all met, John, myself, Pat, Linda, Dr. Kasturi, Dr. Alam, Sean Casson, and Barb Calhoun. And we sat and we talked about NKH and what they were going to do with the research. Okay. And speaking of that research, Dr. Haldar, tell us about Notre Dame's commitment to finding cures for these diseases, and what makes Notre Dame the best place?
Well, Notre Dame's commitment is part of the fabric of Notre Dame's Catholic character. And Notre Dame is fundamentally committed to finding cures for these diseases. They have invested substantially in developing really outstanding faculty and student research to develop therapies. We formed partnerships with the pharmaceutical industry, with Lilly. They help us because you have to work with them to develop therapies, and also with smaller pharma because they actually deliver the therapy. Mm-hmm. But you know, the unique element at Notre Dame is really community. Notre Dame is about community. And so when Pat approached me, I thought, you know, even though we run a broad program, there are 7,000 rare diseases. You say no to a lot of people, but we really couldn't say no to a member of our family. And we have developed a therapy for Niemann-Pick, and it could be applied to NKH. And so that's really how the conversation started. And we formed partnerships with Dr. Van Hove and other members. You know, I said to Pat, you know, the college, the university has to be a part of it. This is not just a matter. And I think that's really what is unique about Notre Dame. It's not a matter of just a researcher going out and working on a disease. It's really the whole community coming together to make sure that this will happen for a very long time.
All right, thank you. Thank you to Pat, Mary, and Doctor. Really appreciate your being with us today.